Arizona's no stranger to shifting landscapes, whether that's new apartment complexes changing the valley's horizon,
or a river carving a canyon to form the state's most popular tourist destination.
Arizonans are especially used to rolling with the tides of change when it comes to our political landscape and its impact on us. Good evening and welcome to tonight's special edition of Cronkite News. I'm Emily Fox-Millian.
And I'm Charlie Vicario. Just a few months into his second term, President Trump's executive orders have impacted Arizonans in dozens of ways, big and small. Tonight, we take a look at a few of the changes across our state.
Since taking office in January, President Trump has signed several executive orders making sweeping changes to the immigration system here in Arizona.
From declaring a national emergency at the border
to ending an app for asylum seekers.
And recently, an airline announced it will run deportation flights out of the Mesa airport. Leah Phillips went down to the border earlier this year to see what's happening on both sides of the border fence.
Each month, volunteers from the Phoenix-based nonprofit Esperanza en la Frontera make the trip across the southern border to offer aid in the form of food and clothing to people seeking a better life.
First is love and compassion. Love and compassion for others. So try showing to others, we're one people.
On the Mexico side of the international border, one people comes in the form of hundreds of migrants who seek out the American dream, which may now be fleeting.
Look, the people on the border don't have the American dream. People on the border? No, I don't think so.
The land of opportunity suddenly out of reach for many. With asylum cases already at a backlog, tightened border security is making the already daunting process seemingly impossible.
We asked for asylum to cross to the other side, but it was no longer possible. The application was closed.
Cisneros and her two young daughters left their home with hopes of seeking asylum. But that hope is never a guarantee. She's just one of many we spoke with in Nogales, starting a new life over 1,500 miles from her home in Guerrero, Mexico.
Mucho coraje.
We are angry because we had the hope to cross, but it is no longer possible.
The Nogales sector is the second largest sector in all of America, serving as a symbol to those who aim to cross it and those who aim to guard it.
We protect our communities, we protect the homeland, and it's our job to keep America safe. And we do that by making sure that people don't come across illegally, narcotics don't come into our communities.
On the other side of the wall, U.S. Border Patrol agents are enforcing these new immigration policies.
We saw things in the last 4 years that are different than they are now, and it clearly changed overnight.
Facing their own unique set of challenges while on duty, making decisions that for many are anything but easy.
There's a lot of Border Patrol agents that are on patrol every night. And these are husbands, wives, children, brothers, sisters, and they're out here to make sure America's safe, our communities are safe.
According to CBP, border encounters are down 36% in just 1 month from December to January.
So no longer can people just come across and have this understanding that you're going to be released. That's not the case anymore. You'll be arrested and you'll be removed.
While border agents continue to seek security, migrants are seeking new opportunities.
They don't have opportunities here. That's why, they want to go over there and have a second chance. They have a better life.
Both doing what they can in a system where the border isn't the endpoint. In some cases, it's just the beginning. In Nogales, Leah Phillips, Cronkite News.
Recent numbers from the CBP show border encounters down 75 to 90% across Arizona's border.
Border encounters may be down, but at the same time, fear of ICE arrests are up. These fears impact a number of communities. Our Cronkite News reporter, Chris Melanie, has more on how the border landscape is reshaping the valley's beauty industry.
Whether you are getting your hair done, your nails polished, or a makeup refresh, the people behind those services may be facing unexpected challenges.
You gotta save money for those rainy days, like grandma or mom used to say, you gotta save money for those rainy days, and I think that's important, and I have done that.
Beauty specialists say they are seeing fewer clients and they believe immigration concerns are to blame. One student at DMH Beauty College told me Saturdays used to be their busiest days.
I would say 2 Saturdays is being so slow. we never seen this stuff before.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics projects a 7% job growth for hairstylists between 2023 and 2033, but that outlook may be changing. Stylists say since the Trump administration cracked down on immigration, even regulars have stopped coming in.
Law is the law. We can't change laws, but we're here and we're strong, and just don't be afraid.
The fair isn't only for clients. According to the Senate Joint Economic Committee, hairstylists and barbers are among the many industries with undocumented workers. And economists like Dan Marburger say immigration reform is necessary to keep these industries affordable.
Documented workers are not here because they like breaking the law. They're here because they want to make a living.
It's not just about the financial concern for D-Image Beauty College, but restoring comfort to the community through beauty. They say they've been here before.
One of the industries that I have seen growth year to year is the beauty industry. Even if we're going through COVID, even if we're going through elections, I see people coming out stronger.
In Phoenix, Caress Melanie, Cronkite News.
At the beginning of this month, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Arizona reported that over 200 people have been charged with illegal immigration activity.
And Governor Katie Hobbs says the historic drop in border crossing under President Trump is good news for Border Patrol.
She says that with fewer people crossing over, Border Patrol can now focus on the criminal elements of migration, such as stopping fentanyl and traffickers from entering the state.
So how are some of these changes playing with public perception? Is the Republican Party doing well? Are Democrats feeling the heat?
Here to talk more about this is Chuck Coughlin, the CEO and president of the political consulting firm High Ground. Thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure being here. Thanks, guys.
So first of all, it's been a dizzying first few months with all these moves being made in Washington. How are we being affected here at the Arizona Capitol, specifically with Arizona Republicans?
Yeah, as I've said, it's sort of like being in a car, being driven by somebody that they quite don't know where they're going. And it's disconcerting to a lot of people that but by and large, I think what the Republicans in Arizona are still very supportive of the president on his immigration policies. He seems to have achieved border control. I think there's a general support for his immigration policies and trying to remove criminal illegal aliens from the country. His response to shrinking the size of the federal government, I think most voters, Republican voters in particular, think that the federal government is just too large. And what are we spending money on? And so I think on those fronts, he's performed well. I think with his most recent acts, though, on the economy and vis-a-vis our tariffs, he's caused a lot of economic disruption. And I think he's towing the line of loyalty with a lot of Republican voters right now in the sense of undermining the American economy.
What about Arizona voters? How are they reacting so far to the many changes coming our way?
Yeah, I think largely the same way. Feeling good about the immigration policies, feeling good about shrinking the size of the federal government, but disturbed as these economic disruptions evolve and people see their 401ks evaporating before their eyes, see the international economic disruption, see small businesses that rely on a stable economy to be able to thrive, to be undermined. I think that's going to cause a significant amount of disconcerting anxiety amongst Republican voters.
And let's talk about tariffs. Is there much Arizona politicians can do to ease the pain caused by some of these taxes?
No. that is why I think people are concerned that it's so centered on him. It's so centered on the president. You've even seen Republican opposition in Congress to begin to express a desire to change those authorities that give him at least what he believes to have unilateral authority over these trade policies. You've seen some Republicans begin to support legislation to limit that authority. But in order to change that, in order to overcome a veto, you'd need 60 votes in the Senate and a clear supermajority in the House as well. And you don't seem to see that right now.
And you touched on it a little bit, but what can we expect in the next 4 to 6 months?
Yeah, that is the interesting issue, is this very concrete idea of you have to pass a budget reconciliation process. How is that going to be resolved? What is going to happen on that? Because you have to execute on the basic premise of governing. You have to have a budget. that you're working on. And if they fail to do that, that's going to cause even more economic disruption. And so I would look at that. I would look at those things. I would see him going back frequently to the immigration issue and talking about that because he's having success with that. I would see him going back frequently to the idea of streamlining the federal government and creating more efficiencies there. He's had a successful narrative going on there. You'll see efforts maybe at international peace efforts with, Iran and those regimes. He's going to try and look for victories because the economy thing is just going to be a continuing troublesome point for them to continue to navigate.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us your expertise and helping us understand what Arizonans can expect in the near future.
Well, we're all passengers in the vehicle, so it's we all have our opinions, and thank you very much for having me today.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
As we mentioned, another big priority for the president is tariffs. Recently, President Trump implemented a universal 10% tariff on most trading partners.
We will be taking in over $1 trillion over the next short period of time with the tariffs that I've already instituted. Now, what's going to happen with the market, I can't tell you, but I can tell you our country has gotten a lot stronger.
Critics are worried that it could raise prices and create a global recession. When we come back from the break, how it could affect businesses and also your wallet.
When I was younger, there were no engineers around me. So I had to become my own role model. At ASU, I wasn't just learning to be an engineer, I was actually engineering. And graduating, I already had real-world jobs lined up. Before ASU, my goal was to be a strong, confident woman. And when I left, I became a strong, confident engineer.
Welcome back. South Phoenix has seen some of its biggest changes in recent years, from rural farms to growing suburbs.
The one thing that hasn't changed is that the Summers family has been selling fresh produce for over 6 decades in the area.
The business has seen its ups and its downs. One unknown: will tariffs affect Summers Fruit Barn and their customers?
I personally haven't been impacted. This has actually been my best year. I mean, we're talking a lot better business. A lot of stuff for $1. I have strawberries for $1. I got green leaf, red leaf, kale, spinach. But this year's it's just been incredible.
Although the new tariffs may not affect local growers or markets like Summers Fruit Barn, many others in the produce industry are bracing for potential price hikes. Our Denzen Cortez hit the streets of New York to find out more.
$2.50 the most.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so expensive.
That sticker shock may hit more of us, as a 10% tariff imposed on international goods is in effect, with produce being some of the items consumers will see increase quickly.
Yeah, because we get a lot of fruit from Mexico. So.
Salim Mati is a small produce vendor and says the majority of food he sells comes from multiple countries, potentially putting him in a tough spot.
Example, mangoes, strawberries, berries, it's gonna be crazy, Now the strawberries, usually we buy it for example, let's say $1. Now we buy it for $3 each.
The tariff breakdown works like this. Normally, consumers can buy these bananas imported from Ecuador for $1.15, but with a global baseline tariff of 10%, consumers will now have to face a little bit more at that cash register and pay $1.27 or more. But for even smaller vendors like Mati, the tariff might hit even harder.
I think it's going to be expensive, yeah. Like, maybe $3 or something like that. So it's a lot of money.
And the impacts of the tariffs travel, in this case, to a family-owned business in the Bronx, where you gotta move fast when new produce arrives. Katzman Produce is a wholesale distribution center. The pallets stacked up to the ceiling are filled with the roughly 450,000 pounds of produce they distribute weekly.
Our business is over 100 years old. I'm fourth generation. I have my siblings in it with me now. My father's still here in the market.
Stephanie Katzman, great-great-granddaughter and CEO of Katzman Produce, have been one of New York's largest and longest distributors, partnering with 55 countries internationally. But she says the tariff could play a domino effect for their family business and the industry as a whole.
How could something like that impact not only the produce industry, but Katzman, that's been around for hundreds of years, generations? How could that impact you guys?
Yeah, so we were happy to hear that it was paused and there's some more negotiations going on. We have tariffs hit from product out of Mexico, Canada, China, and any other countries in the future for we import product, but we're going to see an increase in cost, and that increase in cost is going to be spread down the supply chain, and consumers are really going to be the ones who feel it when they go shopping.
Those trickle-down costs not only affect distributors, but potential small vendors like Monty. These small pallets right here, vendors that buy in smaller quantities affected by the price hike, meaning that distributors and smaller vendors might have to cut back on their quantity to save some money.
And the price is high, so usually, we buy the stuff cheap, that's why we sell it cheap. And the people, they say, oh, before is $1, $2, $3. It's difficult.
Whether at the distribution center down to the consumer, the cost of fresh produce may be about to change for everyone, leaving many to peel back on purchases or swallow the higher prices. In New York, Denzen Cortez, Cronkite News.
Arizonans who enjoy a glass of wine may actually find they benefit from tariffs on alcohol. Leslie Chapman went down south to check out the changing landscape in Arizona's wine country.
Arizona's wine industry has seen significant growth over the last 2 decades. But could President Donald Trump's tariffs against the European Union threaten to disrupt this growth?
The barrels we buy are imported from France generally, so going to be hit with the EU tariffs there. Screw caps we use, or corks, other folks use, same thing. Those are out of Europe. And then in terms of bottles, generally in the industry, they're coming out of Mexico.
This glass of wine costs about $18, and it costs about $2 or $3 to make here at Flying Leap Vineyards. But with tariffs from President Donald Trump on wines from the European Union, this glass could go up in price, but maybe not for the reasons that you would expect.
Mark Barris, president, CEO, and founder at Flying Leap Vineyards, says that tariffs are the least of his concerns.
The general market problems facing the wine industry are the Mount Everest, and tariffs are the little molehill over here, right? So if you're a winery today, I don't get up in the morning with a concern about the president's tariffs, right? I mean, he's the boss, he gets to make the decision, and if that's what they want to do, okay. But it doesn't really impact me.
But Barris did say that their prices could rise by 5 to 7%. Last month, Trump posted to Truth Social threatening a 200% tariff on all alcoholic products imported from the European Union in response to the EU's proposed 50% tariffs on all U.S. whiskey. While those tariffs didn't happen, tariffs for lower amounts are still being imposed. But Callaghan says that he remains optimistic for the future of the Arizona wine industry.
Arizona wine industry is pretty resilient. And yes, we're in a relatively rough patch for us, having basically, the industry's been on a growth curve for whatever it's been, 20 years basically. So you're bound to see a dip here and there, but I think we'll be able to ride it out.
In Elgin, Leslie Chapman, Cronkite News.
After the break, we'll head outside and hit the trails
to see if government cuts are leaving a lasting impact in Arizona's biggest tourism draw.
The ideal visitor experience for a national park visitor is to be able to go to a visitor center and talk to a ranger or talk to somebody who works there and get their, what you would call, human take on the park.
Innovation at the Walter Cronkite School is pushing the boundaries of traditional journalism.
Storytelling has evolved over the years. This is part of that evolution.
Students in the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Lab are using emerging technology to create scenes in augmented and virtual reality, coding playable games, and bringing the audience into the story.
They're only limited by their imagination and their willingness to learn.
Find out more at cronkite.asu.edu.
The scientists and engineers that support the next mission to Mars could be in this class.
Getting a degree at ASU is a journey that can take you anywhere. Into a world of groundbreaking technology and renowned award-winning faculty. Professors who help you to impact the world. Whether you're on campus or at home, becoming your best starts with learning from the best.
I grew up in a small border town, and water was really important to us. Without enough water, we can't farm, we can't eat, we can't live. And the way we're doing it right now, straight up doesn't have a future. I went to ASU because this is a place where you solve problems. With vertical farming, we can grow the same amount of food with 95% less water than traditional farming. The work I'm doing at ASU is changing the way I look at the world.
Welcome back. Arizona's outdoor spaces attract millions of visitors every year, and they boost local businesses and fuel the state's economy.
But with layoffs at the U.S. Forest Service and Parks Department, the visitor experience could soon change. Early last month, I strapped on my hiking boots and hit the trails to see how these cuts could impact the state's tourism industry. Arizona's sprawling landscapes are a draw for visitors and a vital part of the state's economy. But with layoffs hitting the U.S. Forest Service and Parks Department, some experts warn the economic impact could be felt sooner rather than later.
I think that we're going to start to see the impacts within the next month, quite honestly. If you and I were having this conversation 2 weeks ago, I'd say, oh, we're not going to see the impacts, but so many people have been let go, so many offices have been closed.
According to the Arizona Office of Tourism, more than 40 million people visited the state in 2023, contributing over $28 billion to Arizona's economy. Many of those visitors are drawn to the state's national parks and public lands.
To be able to go to a visitor center and talk to a ranger or talk to somebody who works there and get their, what you would call, human take on the park.
Services like guided tours and educational programs could be cut back. The layoffs come as Arizona prepares for the summer months, a time when outdoor tourism typically peaks at national parks. According to the National Park Service, 4.7 million people visited the Grand Canyon in 2023. The question is, will longer lines and slower permit processing have visitors saying enough is enough?
We know that the predictions are that visitation to the parks this year is going to be even greater than last year. I think the visitors are going to keep coming until they realize that their experiences are going to be affected.
And the parks aren't the only areas impacted.
Tourism supported 177,000 direct jobs in Arizona in 2023. And then when you think of how big tourism is and its impact across the economy, it actually supported 322,000 indirect or induced jobs also.
The National Park Service has announced they are hiring seasonal workers, and visitors will know soon whether it's enough to make their park experience all they've hoped for.
National parks aren't the only area feeling the impact of federal budget cuts. Local libraries and museums are also worried. I checked in with some Arizona museums that are already bracing for change. A sunny afternoon at the Desert Botanical Garden gives people more than pretty views. It's a place to learn about the environment and desert culture.
Like other botanical gardens, we are a living museum.
But places like this will face significant funding cuts after the Trump administration placed the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or IMLS, staff on administrative leave, leaving libraries and museums in a state of uncertainty.
The loss of IMLS funding would, at its core, affect us in how we are able to fulfill parts of our mission.
In 2024, Desert Botanical Garden received $238,000 from the IMLS Fund to preserve desert flora.
They originated in Mexico.
An investment they believe is well worth it.
When we know that our impact goes far beyond our garden gates, that's the best feeling of all, because it means what we're doing matters.
IMLS provides funding to museums and libraries across Arizona, including Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. One partnership, the We Be Scientists program, is a hands-on STEM curriculum for school districts across the state.
So having that really deep connection to the desert is something that hopefully is everlasting, and they will grow into adults that are science and conservation minded.
Now the worry is that funding cuts will limit access to educational opportunities moving forward.
Museums would not be able to fulfill the changing needs of their communities in the same way that IMLS allows them to now.
Attorney General Chris May sued the Trump administration to stop the budget cuts to IMLS. This is just one of the many lawsuits she has filed against the Trump administration changes.
There are sure to be many changes to Arizona's landscape in the coming months. If nothing else, living in the desert has taught us to be resilient and adapt to change.
That's it for tonight's special edition of Cronkite News. I'm Charlie Vicario.
And I'm Emily Fox-Millian. Thank you for joining us.